Wednesday, October 13th, 2021. I'm in the Crawford Notch and I am hiking up to the Nancy Cascades. Been a while, haven't made a video since I've started a few, haven't finished a video in months. We'll be hiking up along this brook. Possibly continuing up to these ponds. I think the foliage is just about peak. And a lot of history over here. Standard disclaimer, the story I'm about to tell is true. It's true history. However, I'm going by memory off the top of my head, so I may get some details wrong. Nancy Brook, Nancy Pond, Mount Nancy, all named after a woman named Nancy Barton. The story of Nancy Barton is a tragic one, and it takes place back in 1778. Back in 1778, the United States, or the colonies, were at war with England. The revolution was going on. At the top of Crawford Notch is Jefferson, New Hampshire, small town. That is where Nancy Barton resided, and she was a servant to a colonel named Colonel Whipple. Colonel Whipple, remember, the colonies were at war, fighting for independence. Colonel Whipple was a firm believer and advocate for independence, and he was fighting for it. Well, Nancy Barton at the time, 1778, was 16 years old. Sorry, hiking by this old debris along the trail, and this debris is the remnants of the Lucy Mill, Lucy Sawmill. Lucy was the last name in the family that owned the mill, and they were loggers much later in history, more recent than the story of Nancy Barton. And it's just an interesting place to see, but I'll continue with the story. Nancy Barton was 16 and fell in love with another employee of Colonel Whipple named Jim Swindle. No lie, 16-year-old in those days was considered a grown woman. And a 16-year-old in love doesn't always think straight. Anyway, eventually Jim Swindle proposed to Nancy Barton, which she accepted, and they planned to get married. Nancy Barton, in preparation for her new life, with Jim Swindle. They knew they had to establish their own home. So she traveled down to the coastal city of Portsmouth to make arrangements for their own home. Another little gully and then stairway and rough spot interrupting my story. Okay, so Nancy Barton had gone to Portsmouth to arrange for her new life with Jim Swindle. You know, Colonel Whipple is fighting a war for independence, and they need all the young fighters and young men that they can get. So he convinces Jim Swindle that he, instead of marrying Nancy Barton, should go with him and join the colonial army to fight the British. I forgot to mention also, Nancy Barton, being a 16-year-old in love, wasn't exactly thinking straight, and she gave her dowry, her savings. She worked for Colonel Whipple for years and saved her money. She gave her dowry, entrusted it to Jim Swindle. Well, when Colonel Whipple convinced Jim Swindle that he should go fight for the colonies and not get married to Nancy Barton, he took the dowry and used it to buy a uniform for him to join the army. When the friends of Nancy Barton in Jefferson, New Hampshire found out about this, they sent word down to Portsmouth that she should return right away and clue her in on what's going on. So she promptly returned to Jefferson. Now granted, there's no trains, no roads, no cars. It's quite a distance to travel. By the time she got back to Jefferson, Colonel Whipple and Jim Swindle had already left. It's December, it's freezing. She wasted no time. She was going to set out on foot and catch up to them and convince the man she loved to stay with her. Well, she was in such a rush she did not pack enough supplies, no food, no extra clothing, and she just set out on foot down the Crawford Path through Crawford Notch. Well, this is a rough area back then, I can only imagine. After a day of traveling on foot, she found the campsite of Colonel Whipple and Jim Swindle, and the campfire, where their campfire was still warm. However, they were still way ahead. So she kept going. When she got to Nancy Brook, now think back in the 1778, how women dressed. Long dresses and skirts. Winter times, probably wool, heavy clothing. Well, she went to cross Nancy Brook and fell in, or her clothing went in and became waterlogged and very heavy. And she soon became exhausted and couldn't continue. The neighbors back in Jefferson were so concerned that she took off without proper supplies that they organized a search party to follow up to try and stop her. By the time they arrived at Nancy Brook, where Nancy Barton had become soaked, they found her sitting on a rock, frozen to death. So that is why this is named Nancy Brook. But that's not the end of the story. The story is that when Jim Swindle found out about the death of Nancy Barton, he became so overwhelmed with guilt for taking her dowry and jilting her that he went insane. He had a psychotic episode and was put in a sanatorium where he died. Nancy Barton must have been very popular, because That's why they named the brook Nancy Brook, Mount Nancy, and Nancy Pond. Her body was buried nearby, down the road. They say, this is the part I don't know, there's a hotel down the street called the Notchland Inn. They say it's haunted by Nancy Barton. Sometimes things are moved, but the guests complain. At night, they can hear Nancy Barton crying and screaming. Therefore, these woods are said to be haunted with the ghost of Nancy Barton. Good afternoon. I've gone 3.3 miles. From here the trail goes practically straight up for a short while. I have to decide if I want to keep going. I think I will for a little bit. Near the top of the cascade. Probably halfway up the side of the mountain here. And it is really steep. I just got this strange feeling that I should turn around. Gone about 3.5 miles. Alright. I have been up here before. It is quite steep for a short distance. I think I fell over here last time. That's probably the feeling that I'm getting, that I should turn around. So, I saw the waterfall. Saw the Nancy Brook. And I don't know. Should I turn around or not? Take a little break, drink some water, see how I feel. I don't know how well the camera's picking up. You can see across the notch, Giant Stairs Mountain. Beautiful view. Drank some water, took a rest, decided I would just try and go a little further, and sure enough, trail leveled out pretty much, and I'm at the top of the climb, and it's pretty much level from here on out. So I guess I will continue over to Nancy Pond and see how I feel from there. Little beagle joined me. What's your name? What's your name? Yeah. I don't know where this fella came from. He's just a puppy and he's following me. I assume the owner's behind me. His friend's still with me? I don't know. He heard a bird. He heard a bird. He wants to go chase it. Nancy Pond. The headwaters of Nancy Brook. Named after Nancy Barton, a 16-year-old who died in these parts in 1778, whose ghost now haunts these woods. Just ahead is Norcross Pond, but you can see the other side. I don't know how well the GoPro is going to pick it up, but there's a natural granite ledge dam, so it just looks like the water, like an infinity pool. It's being held back by the natural ledge. This is the natural granite dam. Last time I was here, the water level was quite a bit higher. But it's the neatest thing. take a break here, drink some water, eat a snack, and head back. This is the end of the line for today. After 2, I've got 5.5 miles to go back to the car, so I guess I can't dawdle around. I just took a break, drank some water, ate some crackers, but I better get moving. It's been half hour, gone almost a mile. I'm averaging about 2 miles an hour. It'll still get me out of the woods about 5. I don't want to be stuck in these woods in the dark with the ghost of a scorned 16-year-old haunting the woods. $4:30. The car is right there. Made it back about a little more than 10 miles. Ghost of Nancy Barton did not get me, did not haunt me. I think she gave me a pass because I'm keeping her story alive.